Hi, my name's Sean Tuller, Arlen Tuller. On my official documents, I go by Sean, and I'll be presenting the health concerns of the transgender population. Transgender individuals are people whose gender identity is different from the sex that they were assigned at birth. This is a very diverse community. There are transgender men or transgender women, and additionally, there are um, there are those that are non-conforming gender, non-binary, agender, bigender, or other identities. It's how they identify as. Um, and so there's many forms. Some just do a social transition where they'll just um, like change a name and dress if they're female, well, born female. They'll dress more masculine, or if they were born male and are transitioning to female, they'll dress more feminine. And others will take it a step further and they'll do an illegal name change. And then some can start taking hormones to do a physical um, transition. And others, sorry about that, and others will do it all the way where they do surgery. So there are just many different kinds and then ways people identify. It's just very different. So the size of the population. It was interesting looking at that. There was no definite way to, like on the census. It just didn't say, "Are you transgender?" So there are ways, different studies that were done that we followed and looked up, and basically they predict it through statistical means that 0.36% of the population in Utah are transgender, and this is 2016 numbers. And so that gets us to 7,200 individual. It'll be a little higher right now with our population increase. And nationally, it was, instead of that 0.63, it was 0.36. It was 0.39 nationally, or one out of every 250 adults. And so that got us roughly, to that million mark. So for the whole United States. So Utah numbers were slightly lower than the national average, but again, just hard with not having concrete numbers, and then not a significant difference. So I think the main social determinant of health were the barriers or potential barriers for the transgender population are economic stability. Um, there was basically a lack of income and lack of insurance. A lot of times these people would get fired. There's stories of people getting fired, not getting hired back, not being able to have health insurance, having different health insurance needs as far as if they're wanting to transition physically with surgery or with hormones. And then another one was social and community, where a lot of them do not have support from family, which is very detrimental. And then there was discrimination, and also, due to lack of income, and that, transportation became an issue too. If they had cars, if they weren't economically stable. And with healthcare access, a lot of them avoid medical treatment just for fear of not being recognized and being shunned or discriminated against. And so basically, transgender were not covered by health insurance quite frequently. So there was just not a lot covered at that time. Um, so some special concerns. So they seem to be disproportionately affected by healthcare access and quality of care. In addition to regular care, many require, like we said, the hormone therapy and the surgery. And then providers are unsure of how to deal with these specialized transgender issues. I know in all of Salt Lake, I think there was only one doctor that really deals with this issue, and that's Dr. Lucanar down in the Mill Creek area. So lack of services is definitely an issue there. And there also seems to be a very high prevalence of mental health issues. Among this population, 44.1% are clinically depressed, 33.2% suffer from anxiety, and 27.5% suffer from somnolization. And so, self-harm and not wanting to, just not taking care of themselves. And another 41% actually have attempted suicide. And that is 26 times higher than the general population. And those were 2016 numbers. Some of these root causes get down to discrimination. There is a lot of violence on the transgender community. 47% report being sexually assaulted, and 1 in 10 report being physically assaulted between 2014 and 2015 numbers. And then another one of the root causes is lack of employment. 29% are in poverty rate, and with cisgender, which is non-transgender, so straight people, are at 15.7% poverty rate. 27% have been fired, not hired, or denied promotion because of their transgender status. And 43% feel unsafe at school. 60% are forced to use bathroom locker rooms that don't match with their gender identity, which create a lot of, what's called gender dysphoria, where, they just, feeling like, well, they present as female, but we're being forced into male society, so it affects the mental health issues. And then 50% are unable to use their names or pronoun matching their gender identity. Either they're not allowed to in the situation they're in, or because illegally. And so 40% avoid bathroom because they feel unsafe or uncomfortable in those environments. Now, as far as with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, basically they do not even have a lot of their basic physiological needs met. I mean, if we look at them, definitely have air and water, and shelter becomes an issue for some of them because of the poverty level. Sleep can, because they don't have a place to sleep. Clothing, and then sex. Some of them, as they're identifying, it's just not as easy for them to date and to be able to find connection that way. And then, many are just in constant fear of their safety, employment, feeling loved and accepted, and definitely are unable to reach self-actualization. So I think they just struggle quite a bit just because of their gender identity, which is quite sad. So the communicable diseases or infections, very high risk for HIV. So transgender women are around 49 times more likely to be living with HIV than other adults of the reproductive age. And in some countries, HIV prevalent rate is 80 times higher. So, and then from 2009 to 2014, 2,351 transgender people receive a diagnosis of HIV. 84% were transgender women, 15% were transgender men, and less than 1% had another gender identity for that. So that seems quite high. As we talked about, transgender patients are less likely to seek medical help. So if we're talking about non-communicable diseases, trans men who still have uterus and ovaries may avoid regular screenings just because that can trigger their gender dysphoria. And then use of hormones require monitoring due to potential risk. And then they're also at risk for from harm from self-injecting silicone, just to be able to, trying to affect their appearances. It's not getting the proper help, trying to do it on the cost because of the poverty issues. So high risk of substance abuse. They have a high risk of depression and anxiety, and also high rates of smoking and alcohol use, I believe, just kind of coping mechanisms. Um, and so, as we talked about, definitely they are risk for harm by or to others. So basically, a lot of suicide idealization for them, as we talked about those numbers, and self-harm. So 55% report self-injurious behaviors in transgender youth, and 40% reported repetitive self-injury. So those numbers are quite high. Definitely, there weren't any indications in any of the literature about them being harmed to others. So, and then we have all of our references there, kind of 2 pages of those. And all right, thank you very much.